In 1971, I believe I was a reading consultant. We had in the district reading consultants that would, some of us were housed at one school, and then some of us had maybe one or two schools. Well, I was lucky to be housed at one school, and we were responsible for testing the children, putting them into reading groups, working with teachers and training teachers how to teach reading, and then we would go back and talk to our bosses at that time about what our school was doing. And so that was my job at first. And then I became a vice principal in the district, and I was assisting I've been able to assist some mighty fine principals, John Canary and Conrad Minor, and I worked with them as a team, and they taught me a lot of what about being assisting and the roles of an assistant principal. That's what we called ourselves at that time, an assistant principal in the elementary school. And then I went from that to a principal. I was a principal in 1974 at Pershing, and then I was at a Border Star for about 20 years, and then I was I became a director. During the court order. Okay, that was about 1984, 85, 86, during that time. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because we were doing, we were implementing the program.
You and Dorothy Shepherd.
Eleanor Wilson and Yvonne Wilson. Yvonne Wilson, I think it was Willie Giles, and we were all directors, and Arnie Davenport, I believe. And so we were directors at that time. And then I returned, to Border Star after that. So I've been quite busy in the district, I can say.
Tell me a little bit about that time during the startup of the DSEC plan when you were the director.
Okay. When I was the director of elementary education, we were our job was to kind of work with the schools. And at that time, I had the schools we called the Southwest Cluster, and we had there was Hartman, Hale Cook, and Marlboro. And I remember our job at that time was to gather the principals together, and we told them, dream a school. Oh, just dream a school. And then in the dreaming, now let's create a school. And so that's what we were doing. And so we just had fun, just dreaming a school, because the sky was the limit. And so then we were also charged with talking to the staffs, trying to get them ready, for this new experience that we were having in the school district. And we also had to kind of talk to the community people, in those communities at that time, to kind of see what was, what was happening, and to kind of get some input and to get their feelings.
Did those schools have any? They were not magnets, so they didn't have any particular theme.
Well, yes, they did. Hartman, Hale Cook, and Magnet. They were science math magnets. Oh, yes, okay. And now Border Star, where I was at Border Star, when I came back, I think Border Star and Bryant, they were the schools that weren't included as magnets. Okay. And so and that's probably something else we'll talk about. But at that time, as a director, I was really working with those schools, to help them dream and try to get their budgets together, and then to identify the theme, and then I think we had a lot of experts coming in, talking about math and science and how would it look in a school, and what do you want to offer to children and different things like that. So we did quite a bit of dialoguing, with our staff, talking to some of the experts that would come in. They call them experts from different cities and different states that would come in and kind of talk to our staffs and talk to us, as well. Well, you know what? It was we had to listen, and it was we didn't spend as much time really with our communities, because a lot of the people in the community did not know exactly what we were trying to do. A lot of the communities did not want to they did not want their youngsters leaving, going to other schools, based on a theme. And a lot of the community people, black and white, were they were resisting the change, because they didn't want to leave the neighborhood school. And so So we had occasions where we would, would be sitting, talking, and not as many probably as we should have, to kind of talk with them, kind of get them ready for what was happening. And so our main, at that time, we were mainly talking to the community, saying, this is what we're bringing. This is what we're bringing, and we wanted to buy in. And, we know a lot of times as administrators and as visionaries, we have a dream. But we know, it takes the community, the students, and to capture that dream with you. And somehow we weren't really able to, the community didn't really capture the dream, that the administration had at that time. I think they had what they called at one time a 40-60 ratio, a 40-60 ratio. And some of our children of color wanted to get into some of the schools. I mean, say like maybe a youngster wanted to leave Border Star, a black youngster wanted to leave leave Border Star and go to Longan, but they could not get in because I think that I think we had two goals in, with the court order. We wanted to, number one, we wanted to create schools that would cause non-minorities to come back to the Kansas City School District. And then as a second objective, we wanted to improve the achievement level of minority youngsters. And we kind of forgot about that part, that second part. Yeah. So we were quite busy trying to create these schools, thinking that the non-minorities would come back, to the Kansas City School District. For instance, if I had a black student, at stay at Border Star at that time, if they wanted to go to Longan, which was the French magnet, okay, sometimes it was difficult for them to get in because we had that 60-40 ratio, and so the top priority was to make sure that we had seats for the non-minorities coming in. So a lot of our black youngsters got caught up in, in other words, they were over the 40%. So they had to go back then to, to their school. Yeah. I think and not only the black community, but the white community as well, because I think the bus ride, sometimes the bus, it was a long bus ride, in the morning for the children to get to different places. And of course, I think we were bringing children from outside the district as well. So some of the children were at the bus stops a long time. And then, the parents were feeling that, well, the school is too far from, something happens to my child, how can I get over there, and different things like that. So there were a lot of concerns. The busing, created some problems as well.
So what were some of the attitudes of educators and school staff at the time regarding school integration?
They were, some said, oh, we welcome the change.
That stem and just say some
yes.
of the attitudes.
Okay. Some of the attitudes, an attitude that I don't know what it's all about. They were fearing. They didn't know if they would have their jobs, and especially when we start speaking in terms of bringing experts, to teach children certain things. Well, I think a lot of the teachers were feeling at that time, will I have a job? And also feeling, am I equipped to do what they're expecting me to do?
Those magnet.
Yeah, those magnet themes, And then too, I think they were also concerned about the training. Is there going to be training for us? And and then who makes a decision, who stays and who goes? So I think it was a lot of unrest, at that time.
We brought in a lot of teachers from overseas.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did, and that was a concern, and I think it was a concern in the neighborhood as well, and then a lot of times parents they grow accustomed to a teacher. If a teacher has a history of excellence and things like that, they're concerned about, will this teacher be in this building? Will this teacher be able to follow my children? And so it was quite a concern, with teachers, about their, about their position and the training. And then a lot of teachers welcomed, the change.
So in what ways do you feel that you contributed to school integration?
Well, as an administrator, in the building, I was always aware of the goals, of the court order, and I had to make sure that I was thoroughly reinforcing, what district said, or even what the court said. And you'd be surprised the people who really had not read the court order, where they were clueless. And that's because we didn't have as many opportunities, to bring staff together and say, this is the court order, and this is what the court order says. Do you have any questions, step by step? And so they were at a loss because they were constantly asking the question, well, why is it that the white children have to come in, and where are we getting the white children? And why can't my black child, receive the same type of, whatever that they're giving, the amenities and things like that. So it was, I think, my job was really to basically constantly go over and over the court order, to say this is what the court order says, and this is the way that we're moving forward in implementing the court order. So it was a constant going back and forth.
So given your role in the district during 1971 to 1997, recall what you remember about academic outcomes for students.
During that time we had, like a basic test, Iowa test of basic skills, and I think we were in the that frame where we're all trying to, we want our boys and girls to be successful on the Iowa test of basic skills. So a lot of times, when we think in terms of student outcomes, I'm not so sure that the skills and the knowledge and the abilities of our children was really, the things that they were being taught was really in line with what the test. So we didn't have the alignment the way that it should have been.
What we always talked about in terms of that curriculum alignment.
That curriculum alignment. And then we didn't have what we would consider like a viable curriculum, at that time. So different people were doing different things, based on their knowledge of curriculum and instruction, because more emphasis was on getting the getting the themes, organized and all that. And so somehow we weren't able to bring it all together by having that main curriculum for everyone. And that's why they said, different schools were doing different things. And I think during that period, everyone was trying to survive. And we got caught up, schools pitting one against the other. And so principals had to work in their schools. In other words, I'm going to make sure that my boys and girls are able to do this and this and this. And so it was not a connection, in terms of everyone is receiving the same kinds of things. And so the outcomes were not clearly defined.
What might have been some of the social outcomes for students in terms of desegregation?
Well, you know what? I think I think that we probably would have been able to, our boys and girls, right now in this day and age, if the deseg had worked like we wanted it to work, boys and girls would they would do a better job of communicating and looking at the differences that we all bring to the table, but being able to look at those differences and also say, we're more alike than we are different, and then we would be able to kind of problem solve together, because we would be accustomed to working with people that didn't look like us.
Right.
And so some of our boys and girls lacked some of those experiences. And then we weren't able to really build a base of support, trying to operate alone, because what happened without the integration, and it becomes an economical thing, the economics, we tend to lose a support base. I don't think we've had a levy since about 1969, and then I think during the court order they was trying to tax us with some kind of levy, and I don't think it worked, and that it didn't work. And so if we were able to kind of socialize and bring people together to see the need of good public education, and I think we kind of failed there. We just weren't able to work together collaboratively because of the have and have-nots. And so, we never did bring the have and have-nots together to really kind of talk about it. So that could have been a good social thing for our community.
So in what ways might school integration have shaped Kansas City communities?
I think that it probably would have had an impact on people working together, people coming together to solve conflicts, building a better city, more support for public education, more support for education, and then so long in education. When I can remember when I first started, we felt that we could do it all by ourselves, and sometimes we looked at the community as a threat because we felt they would come in and say, "Oh, you can't do this or you can't do that," and so we weren't secure. But now I know, being the principal of so many years, I know now that Jessie Kirksey can't do it all. But I have to bring in the community. I have to bring in the social workers, the mental health people, and all that to help me build a school and things like that. And so I think that if integration had worked the way that we wanted it to work, we would see a better cooperation, in the communities.
So what changes do you think are needed to improve outcomes for students in today's schools?
Well, I think what we have to first start with is the being able to have that curriculum, curriculum that's viable. Then I think we have to understand the learner. We have to understand who are the children that we're educating, and what is it that the community wants for their children. What do parents want, for the children? And then I think we're going to have to take children and kind of identify now how do our youngsters best learn. And I think that we have to realize that it takes, we have to really bring in the village. We have to bring in all sorts of resources, to really understand. And then we must make sure that the education that we're providing, it will be an education that we can truly say they have academically been successful. In other words, they've been able to finish college, get jobs, marry, and raise their children and things like that. And a lot of times, in our schools now, we're missing something. And so I think that we have to really go back and take a look at what are we offering in our schools, and do we really understand who we are instructing, and do we know how to teach children how to learn, and what part the community plays, and things like that. And even if we don't have the resources, like some people like to use excuses, well, they're from the other side or this, or they don't have that, but we need to understand that the children can learn if they're given those resources. And I'm not just saying that we have to have a $1 million facility or those kinds of things, but the resources in our mind, if we don't know, we can go to the community and say, these are the kinds of things, that we need for our children. But in an urban setting, we have to constantly be able to sit down and collaborate and talk about, and then be able to kind of change, our mindset. I think I was at a workshop the other week, and they were talking about the influences that children, what are the top 5 influences on children. And they kind of started, and they said, well, in the 50s and 60s, it was the church. It was the church. And then they started talking, and then it became a parent. But now they're saying now today it's media, And a lot of times we have forgotten all about that when we're trying to provide an education of the finest quality, because we go back to the way we did things in 1920 and 1930, So it's just a rethinking of how we're going to approach the learner.
So is there anything else that you would like us to know about school integration in Kansas City?
You know what? I think that it can. I think that integration can work. I think that we need to look at the things that happen in the Kansas City School District, and use it as as a guide. And because there were some pluses, we can't say it was all wrong. Because there were some youngsters that, some youngsters did achieve it and things like that. But I guess it wasn't significant to say we had 50 or 60% of our youngsters doing this. So just take a lesson from what happened in Kansas City, because if we don't work together and if we don't come together, as a team, I think that we're going to lose.